God took me to a place where we're going to talk about the fact that He broke me to bless me. So He broke me to bless me. And for different people, that'll mean some different things. It's okay that it doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. But everybody can say, He broke me, bless me. And so, if we can turn together to the first book of the Bible, to Genesis. The first book is after, the table of contents. I promise you will get there. It's right before Exodus. I promise you'll make it. So Genesis, we're going to go to the 32nd chapter. Once you get to the 32nd chapter, if you can stand with me, if you are able to. So Genesis 32, and we will begin at verse 24. Genesis chapter 32, verse 24. And I will be reading from the New King James Version, but I guarantee the story will read the same in yours. Verse 24, then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. 25, now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and that he is capitalized. He touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he, capital H, said, let me go, for the day breaks. But he said, being Jacob, I will not let you go until you bless me. 27, so he, capital H, said to him, what is your name? He said, Jacob. 28, and he, capital H, said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked, saying, tell me your name, I pray. And he, capital H, said, why is it that you ask about my name? And he blessed him there. May the Lord have a blessing to the readers and the doers of His word. You all may be seated. Father, thank you for allowing us to come together one more time in your name, God. It's not by our grace, God. It's not by our power. It's not even by our worth that we are here today, God. I pray that the word you have given me, Father God, it will reach those who are supposed to reach, Father God. And I pray that as we leave this place, Father God, that your word will never leave our presence. In the mighty name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. So He broke me to bless me. He broke me to bless me. Well, God, why are you breaking me? I'm already fragile. I'm fragile. Why are you breaking me in order to bless me? You're God. You can do whatever you want to. Why are you breaking me to bless me? You have healed people on the side of the road. Why are you breaking me to bless me? You healed this woman that had an issue of blood for many years. You didn't break her. Why are you breaking me in order to bless me? But you still yet broke me. I don't get it, God. Why are you breaking me? That sounds kind of destructive. There's nothing in our lives that is perfect. But God always finds beauty within our mess, no matter what it is. When we start walking down our own path, God will give us those warning signs. Now, if we take heed to the warning signs, that's on us. But He will give us those warning signs. He will give you that caution sign. He will give you that yielding sign. We often live or remember when we lived our lives as though nothing could ever touch us. Although we go through these terrible situations, or we did go through those, we will always ponder on how we made it through. But my question to you right now is, did you think about why you came out? How you came out? Who brought you out? What strength you and yourself possessed to bring yourself out of the situation? Or did you just come out and go on about your time? Go on about your day? Did you do it? Did you question who did it at all? When people were talking about you behind your back or to your face, how did you learn to let that roll off your back? Were you strong enough to teach yourself that? I wasn't. It's taken me a long time to even reflect. When I was just a little bit younger, there was no reflection. I was going off. And then I would come back and smile. But now I'm learning, I can't even let things roll off of my back by myself. I don't even have that much strength. So I don't know about you, but I'm yet still in the process of learning me. I have a long way to go, yet I've still come a long way. After grade school and middle school, I probably could have gotten into a lot more trouble than I did. I probably really could have, but to the outside world, I was great. Nobody knew. I was great. To the outside world, it was awesome. I don't think at home, my parents are here, y'all can tell me if I'm lying, but at home I don't think I was too crazy. I don't think I was in too much trouble often, because I knew. I had been forewarned. I have these warning signs. I heeded their warning signs. They told me often, don't do this, don't do that. So I didn't have to guess who was telling me this. I didn't have to guess what the outcome would be after. I knew if I acted up, I could expect. That was a different type of expectation, but I could expect something was coming quickly. As soon as I got home, whether I was hiding or not, it was going to happen. Because they could always find me. They knew where I was. It wasn't just something that I was told once. When we would go to the store, as many can attest to this, don't touch anything, don't ask for anything. When I'd go outside, it was cold, wear your coat, gloves, scarf, everything. Don't go out there catching something. Because when you come back in, you still got to go to school, so just don't catch anything. You might as well get yourself together. The more I listened, the more trouble I stayed out of. If I rode my bike without wearing closed-toed shoes, my riskiness would be made evident as I walked inside with scraped toes. I still have those scrapes on my toes today. Because I wore flip-flops riding a bike. I know how to ride a bike. But you knew if that front goes and it gets caught under, you're tumbling. I had been forewarned, and I got hurt. After I got hurt, I learned my lesson. I never did it again. But that was because my parents told me what would happen. So I knew better because I was told over and over and over again. I also just didn't want to get punished. I didn't want to get in trouble. So I tended to just do what it was that I was told. How long did it take me to get to the point that I stopped tempting my parents? You know, as a child, you just tempt your parents to see how far you can get until you get that final beat and you're like, I'm not tempting you anymore because I can't handle that anymore. How long did it take you to stop tempting? Whoever popped in your head at that moment, how long did it take you to stop tempting? To stop feeling that pain of rebuke? How long did it take? Or are we still there? Because as a child of God, I know I was born into this sin thing. So I know it's going to take me a long time to get perfect because I'll never get there. So I'm still learning. I'm still there, so it's okay. I'm still working. Because sometimes I still tempt. How many of you have ever said, God, if you do this, then? God, if you take this, then? God, if you take them out, then? We tempt God just to see if he's really God. And then when he does something, we get in amazement. Like, God, I didn't know you knew. We just need to test sometimes because when we don't see something, we test them even more. I saw my dad with the belt. I wasn't testing him anymore. I saw him. Thank you. There was nothing I would do once I saw what would happen. So just because we don't see God doesn't mean the rebuke won't come. That just means you won't see it coming. So, Jacob found himself in a predicament. It forced him into a literal broken place. Although he had already taken the birthright of his brother, He had snatched this from his brother. He tricked his brother already. He then schemed with his own mother to take that same brother's blessings. So now, he was too afraid to fight his brother that he wasn't afraid to mistreat before. He was afraid to now fight for his actual blessing. He stole somebody else's, but now he was afraid to fight for his own. Therefore, God had to literally break him down to have no other choice but for him, for Jacob to rely on God himself. So this took me to a movie. It was a book first, but they turned it into a movie called The Shack. Did anybody see The Shack? Or anybody read the book, The Shack? Well, if you didn't, I'm telling you the storyline. Still watch it, it's amazing. In the movie, The Shack, there was a man named Mac. Mac was a man's man. He just rough. That's who he was. Mac was yet a wonderful husband and father, but his faith wavered due to a major situation that him and his family had endured. During a weekend trip in the woods, in the mountains, his youngest child was yet abducted and killed while they were there. And at that point, Mac's faith, his life, his belief, everything crashed down. In that very moment, everything came tumbling down. As you can imagine, he questioned God. This little girl was under 10 years old. She was helpless. Why would he take her? Why would God take her like that? In that way? Well, God was breaking Mac in that situation, in that moment. As hard as it sounds, as rough as it sounds, God was breaking Mac in the situation by making the situation take place. As harsh as our situations seem, when we lose a loved one, when we lose a job, when we lose a car, when we lose a house, God is breaking you, because at the end of that broken state, there's yet a worship that comes from it. So your broken place isn't your ending, I promise. Time had gone on, but as you can imagine, Mac's heart hadn't healed. This was his baby. His heart had not healed, and the rest of his family, although they were still struggling, they attended church regularly. They would pray. They would do what most do that have a relationship with God. But not Mac. He had stopped. He was pretty much done at that point. He distracted himself from it, all because God, he believed, had forsaken him by allowing his daughter to die. Now, at one point, his entire family was so close to God that they called him Papa. God was their dad. They went to God for everything. God was Papa. In an ironic to us turn of events, Mac receives this mysterious letter in the mail. In the middle of a bad blizzard. It was bad. Nobody was on the roads. It was a horrible blizzard. But this letter was to him from Papa, asking him to come back to the place where his daughter was killed. Now, first off, it's a blizzard. Why is there mail? Second off, it was signed by Papa. There was one neighbor that knew that they called God Papa. Why are you putting a letter in my mailbox, neighbor? Why? And two, my daughter just died. What kind of trick are you playing on me? You know I'm still hurt. Why, neighbor? You're supposed to be my friend. Why? Why? So even in that, Mac goes off on the neighbor. You know that's what we do first when something happens. Right. We don't ask questions, we just go off. Like, why? What? Ask questions first. No, he went off. Completely off. And after he went off on the neighbor, he starts walking back to his own house, and he falls. He falls and hits his head. He hits his head and he blacks out. Right, Natalia, I did the same thing when I watched it 3 times. Her mouth just dropped. He blacked out. Because at that moment, his healing was beginning. So, in the midst of this, he retreats back to the woods. And this is where the shack comes in. The shack was the place of his brokenness. So God in himself invited him back to his brokenness that he had forgotten, that he had tried to put in the back of his mind. Sometimes it's hard for us to have to think about the hardest times we ever went through, but God will keep making us reflect on it until we stand on it and we take that to him. But Mac wasn't there. Mac was not there. He went back to the shack not in expectation of seeing God or meeting God there. He went back to the shack with the expectation that the killer had written this letter and he was going to be able to face this killer and kill the killer like he had wanted to do for a while. His expectation was not in the faith that he had started out with, but it was in the reaction that humans are born with. So, as I fast forward a little bit, I said he was in the woods. He's walking very cautiously. Can you imagine you're by yourself in these woods, it's snowing, you have a gun, all of a sudden you hear wrestling. You see no one. There's trees, there's rocks, there's snow. This is all you hear. Eventually a man appears and he walks by Mac. As he's walking, he's just smiling, hey Mac. Mac is stunned. And this man just keeps walking. And he walks by. In that very moment, Mac's life begins to change. I'm at this place of my brokenness. I see something so unfamiliar. I don't know how to tap into this unfamiliar situation. So I'm not gonna move. I'm gonna stay here. In our lives, in our situation, that's when we need to say, God, I will not move until you bless me. This is so unfamiliar to me. I see this light. I see it. But this is unfamiliar to me. I don't know if I should go left or right. All the roads look the same. So God, I'm going to stay in this place until you bless me, until I understand what we're doing. Although it is surprising, it shouldn't be surprising that God will guide us right into the promised land despite our fussing and fighting. He fussed and fought over that letter, asking him to go back to the shack. But what would have happened if he would have never returned to the place of his brokenness? God guided Mac back to the place of his greatest hurt to begin this healing process that wouldn't have ever taken place in Mac's comfort zone. We tend to stay with our friends that we're comfortable with and not branch out to other people because we're afraid of what people will think. But once we branch out, how can you bless somebody else in what you know and who you know? Our comfort shouldn't be our hiding place. Comfort doesn't always mean safety. If God allows it, whatever your it is, it will find you wherever you are. At the shack, God presented himself as the Holy Trinity. He presented himself as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And you may be thinking, how? They were in this place. They were in a building. They were in a house. Then they were on a mountain. How did he present himself as all three? Well, that's because God is God and he's all three. So he can do whatever he wants to, how he wants to, but it was amazing to see how he manifested himself for this one person. An amazing thing about God even being presented to Mac as the Trinity was that God transitioned himself between being a father and a mother at any given point, depending on what Mac needed. When we think of a mother, we typically think of the nurturing and the caring nature of a mother, and that mom just may take care of the house, doing whatever she needs to do, right? And then we think of a father, a lot of times we think of a father as being the correcting parent. The father who, if you need something that's a little heavier to carry, you can go to the Father. And in that moment, God knew that Mac needed both. So when Mac first got out there, he didn't need a correction from a father. He needed the caring nature of a mother. So he walked in the house and there was God as his mother. So she was there cooking breakfast. I know I'm not the only one that loves breakfast, so if you cook breakfast, I'm probably going to come in the house too. But she cooked breakfast, and over this breakfast period, that's where she started talking to him. Now, Mac was still hard. He was still hurt. He didn't really want to open up, but there's something about this presence that I'm still really unaware of that's making me open. I'm still going to try to tell you what's going on. And so it was obvious that Mac wanted to be there, now even in his brokenness. So we have to get to the point where our brokenness is no longer scary, but is then our healing. In the moment that Mac tried to understand his situation, to him, it wasn't great. To us, it was amazing. Can you look back over your life and see God being all that and more to you? Was there ever a time when you said, I was by myself, but I need my mother? Was there a time when you said, look, this person's getting on my nerves, I need to hear my father right now? God will be all of that because he's been that. When you were crying at night, how did you feel? When that kid messed with you on the playground, who reminded you of those good karate chops that you had learned that might not be legal, but who reminded you of all that? That might have been the father God. The mother God might tell you, look, baby, just go find some other friends. But in those situations, God is who he needs to be to you. God took Mac through sorrow, repentance, the realization of who the ultimate judge is. And he does the same thing for us. He always breaks us for us to understand who we need to come back through. What God gives us through this is that our pain is not our ending. There will be times in our lives when we go through situations that take us completely out in that very moment. There have been times in my life where I was so down that I felt as if I was literally sinking past the surface of this earth. As dramatic as that sounds, that's just where I was. Even though all of that happened, I was reminded of a story that was told of a man that did no wrong and yet was broken just for me. Now, I had to make that personal for a moment, but he was broken for all of us, and he did nothing wrong. He was always being punished by people. There were times that he was punished by being mocked, had stuff thrown at him. People had the audacity to spit on this man. People even beat this man. But this was all for him following what God told him to do. What earthly man could come back from that? What amount of healing would we be able to strengthen up in this earthly man to be able to the point of being able to minister to others after all of that brokenness? Well, there isn't one. That really wasn't a trick question. We think real deep sometimes, but there isn't an earthly man that can get to that point to go through all of that brokenness and still come back and bless others. Even more, if God can do this to Christ, if Christ had listened to the hundreds of thousands of people he told about God, he would have left our healing right where he hung. These people were nasty and dirty to Christ. If he would have just left my sins where they were, I'd be really out of luck right now. And if I'd be out of luck, sorry to tell you, but you'd be out of luck too. But he didn't, because his brokenness wasn't the end of his story. And I'm grateful that the story didn't end right there. Before Christ went to the cross, we've heard the story in the Bible where Jesus had this moment of emotional brokenness. But in that very moment, God himself took hold of Christ's brokenness in the earthly man that he was sitting inside of to ensure that we be saved today. He took back his son so that his son can take on my mess. So Christ even questioned God in this moment. God, if you would take this from me, if you would take this from me in that moment. It's hard to think of Christ being broken, but Christ had gone through all this. If Christ can be broken, then who am I to not think I can be broken for things so little? He got 12,000 times worse things happen to him than we ever do. I deserve my brokenness. Christ didn't deserve any of his, but yet he still took it on. Now we're going back to Mac, and if Mac had listened to that one person, to that one neighbor that told him not to chase after the expectation of what he was initially going for, he would have left his healing at the shack. He would have remained broken and his soul would have been completely lost. But then there's God. The power of God will pull us to the places that we need to be because he knows us just that well. Until we're broken, the face of God will truly be revealed. We hide ourselves. We hide ourselves and we think we're doing it well. But we hide ourselves and don't allow ourselves to feel who God is. And so there's some things I don't want you to be guilty of, even in your brokenness. I don't want you to be guilty of the failure to appear. And what that means in this situation is I don't want you to be guilty of not submitting yourself to God. In the midst of your brokenness, submit. As hard as it is, submit. No matter who's talking, submit. Submit yourself to God. Don't be guilty of trying to handle it all yourself. Why? It's not going to work out. The next thing I don't want you to be guilty of, assault with a deadly weapon. Now, this assault with a deadly weapon is real deadly. It has to do with our mouths. Talking against God. Talking against other people of God. Don't be guilty of doing that. Go back and submit to God. I also don't want you to be guilty of driving with a suspended license. Don't drive your faith without repenting. Now we do a lot of different things. We do wrong and say, oh, oops, and go on about our day. And wonder why these things keep coming up. We need to repent. Don't be guilty of that. And the next one is, don't be guilty of contributing to the delinquency of a minor. This is serious. It's a serious business. If this is on your warrant, this is serious business. You can go away for a long time for this. Don't be guilty of not sharing your faith with a new believer. Don't be guilty of not sharing your faith with any believer. Don't be guilty of not doing what you have been commissioned to do. Your warrant should have things that you're guilty of that God can come back and say, yes, I know. I'm guilty of praising God even in my brokenness. I'm guilty of smiling when I feel like I should probably be crying. I'm guilty of loving God even though I can't see him. I'm guilty of utilizing my faith to get what others said I cannot attain. That should be what we're guilty of. Use your victories, which comes out of God's breaking you, to teach others about him. They see you falling. Some people want you to fall. Some people push you over to help you fall. But at the end of it all, when you get back up and God puts you back together, remember, he broke you to bless you. Sometimes God has to let us hit rock bottom, where you see that you can't do anything to save your own self. And that's when God cripples us. And we see how weak we really are. And in that moment, we cling to him. Because if I'm weak, I need something to pull me up. If I'm weak and I try to pull myself up, I'm going nowhere. That floor is going to be my best friend. I can't do anything. We have to ensure that our pride doesn't blind us from our need of God. God must break us of our self-dependence so that he can bless us as we cling to him even in our brokenness. So this brokenness that Jacob was going through, he was broken in this tussle with God, and God sent him to see his brother broken. Can you imagine going to battle limping? You're already hurt, and you're afraid that your brother is going to hurt you, but God already sent you to battle hurt. Now, in our little finite minds, I know we're thinking, look, you must be trying to get me killed. I mean, I love you, but this don't sound too great. I'm limping to battle. I'm supposed to probably limp out of battle, but yet I'm going into battle already broken. Why? Well, in Jacob's situation, Jacob is being sent to battle broken because now he has nothing else to do but to rely on God. So his blessing came in the fact that he was yet broken going into this fight. You might be going into your fight of not having a job, but you were blessed because you have this faith of this man who broke you into that situation. You might be going into this fight where you say, I don't know why so-and-so doesn't love me. Well, God broke you so that you can love him a little bit more. You might be saying, why did my loved one die? Well, God broke you because your heart needed something else. And it was filled up with this manifestation that you created yourself. I needed to break you so that in your healing I could bless you and you could be a little bit stronger. God, why does my car keep messing up? Well, I had to bless you and put you on the bus so you could realize your job wasn't the reason you got that car. So as you were walking to the bus and you saw all these other people that you pass by every day, I bless you to see this. Because you just kept thinking it was you. When you feel like you have no more friends, say, God, why am I all alone? Well, I had to break you of your dependence on everybody else because you left me in the back burner. I never left you, but you left me. So I had to break you of what you thought was best for you. I had to break you to give you what you needed. I had to break you to give you life. God broke Jesus to get us. Now I'm glad that I'm here. I'm sad that Jesus had to be broken. But I'm grateful that he was broken. Because as soon as he got up on that cross, my blessing came. As soon as that blood started dripping down his side, my blessing came. As soon as all the onlookers saw him, my blessing was there. Because they saw him on this road where they crucified people. It was at a place that was next to a road where everybody that went by could see. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't too high where they couldn't tell who it was. They saw it was this man that had been walking and blessing people. They saw it. And they saw him on that cross with these holes in his side. And this blood dripping down his side. They saw his brokenness. But when he got up, they saw your blessing. They didn't know what they were looking at, but they saw your blessing when that tomb was empty. When that napkin, when that cloth was neatly set to the side. when he did everything others said that he wouldn't do, when he went back to his disciples and he saw them again. When Thomas said, I need to see him for myself, he looked my blessing right in the face. I was broken before I was created. I didn't feel my brokenness until now, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful for my limp. I'm grateful that he didn't stop at just one broken place. As crazy as it sounds, I probably wouldn't have faith like I have if he only broke me once. Because I'm me and because I'm hard-headed, I'm grateful that he breaks me multiple times, over and over and over and over and over again. In the future, I'm grateful for the broken times that he will break me then, so my faith won't fail. He won't fail me. So I'm grateful that he broke me in order to bless me. When you go home, when you get in the car, even if you need to have a grandchild pull it up for you, I say that now because when I say this to you, some of you are going to look at me and say, I don't know how to work my phone. I want you guys to listen to a song. The name of the song is Limp. It's by Jonathan McReynolds. In this song, he's talking about Joshua. But then he also puts himself in this place. And he says, see, life hits and life hurts. I think I've seen some of life's worst. But you've been there, so you understand. And he's talking to Jesus. See, I fell and I broke something, but I couldn't tell because I kept running away from your love and grace. So my trips and my pains, my failures, they only make me desperate to seek your face. The devil hoped this injury would make me stop and take defeat, but I know Jesus walks with me, so I'll just keep on walking with my limp. Limps are every weakness, limps are every flaw that keeps us having an otherwise perfect walk. And we were born handicapped, but God gives us strength back, and all that you lack, you receive if you just keep on walking with your limp. I'll pursue victory because when they beat you, you looked just like me. You were struggling with your passion and your love. It kept you walking with your limp. Calvary, walking with your limp. No matter what they said, you kept walking with your limp. Yeah, that's my Savior with his limp. Just so one day I can walk with my limp. And I can still be loved even with my limp. I can still be used even with my limp. I can still be saved even with my limp. So I'll just keep on walking with my limp. God blesses you God breaks you in order to bless you. So whenever you start limping, just thank him for the brokenness. It may hurt. You may need some medication. You may need a doctor. But you're broken for a purpose. You're broken for a reason. You're broken for this season. It won't last always. You will come into another broken state. Other people will come into that same broken state, but there's a purpose. At the end of it, you will be blessed. When you see other people walking with their lamp, bless them. Don't be guilty of the things we shouldn't be guilty of. Tell them to keep on walking with their lamp. Tell them to keep on praying with their lamp. Tell them to keep on worshiping with their lamp, because their brokenness is not the end of their story. You were broken to be blessed, and your blessings will bless others.